Good morning, and thank you for tuning in once again to Daily Bible Canada, where we're bringing you your daily dose of the Bible that you long for, that you require, that you deserve, that God has blessed you with. Today's topic is history's warnings, specifically warnings from Israel's history. And we're going to be finding this in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and we're going to read the whole chapter like we always do. That's our commitment to you, to bring you the fullness of the Bible. If we were to just go along and pick out certain verses that we liked, you wouldn't get the fullness of the gospel. You wouldn't get the fullness of what God has given us, what has been passed on from generation to generation. So we're going verse through verse, bringing you the fullness of the gospel, and most importantly, bringing you your daily dose of the Bible. So if you'd like to turn with me to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. As always, I'll be reading out of the King James Version, using New International Version for reference. Folks, I sincerely thank you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed today's lessons. Chapter 10 verse 1 tells us, "Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant, how that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea." Paul is trying to point out here is he's not wanting us to be ignorant of the fact that our forefathers were all under the cloud, but they all passed over the sea. But they all went over the sea. Verse 2, "And all were baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea." Now he's going on to say that Moses baptized all of them in the cloud and in the sea. Verse 3 he says, "And did all eat the same spiritual meat." Verse 4, "And did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ." Verse 5, "But with many of them God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness." When believers fail to exercise self-control, they begin to expose themselves to danger, as evidenced by the Israelites wandering into the wilderness. Paul lists 4 privileges that could have led to subsequent blessings for the Israelites, but didn't. Number 1, they were guided by God's presence. Number 2, they escaped the Egyptians by crossing the parted sea. Number 3, they feasted on manna and quail in the desert. And number 4, they were supernaturally given water. Verse 6 tells us, "Now these things were our examples, to the intent we should not lust after evil things, as they also lusted." What he's trying to point out here is it's examples to keep us from setting our hearts on those evil things like they did. Verse 7 says, "Neither be ye idolaters, as were some of them. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink, and rose up to play." He's going on here to point out that we're not supposed to be idolaters like some of them were. And he tells us that it was written that the people sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in pagan revelry. Verse 8 says, "Neither let us commit fornication, as some of them committed, and fell in one day 23,000. We're not supposed to commit sexual immorality like some of them did. And in one day, 23,000 of them died. Verse 9, "Neither let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted, and were destroyed of serpents." We're not supposed to test the Lord like they did as well. And because of that, they were killed by the snakes. Verse 10, "Neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured, and were destroyed of the destroyer." Once again, we're not supposed to grumble like they did, because they were killed by the destroying angel. Despite all the blessings they received, the Israelites proved faithfulness in 4 ways. Number 1, they repeatedly complained about their conditions in the desert. Number 2, they committed idolatry by worshiping the golden calf. Number 3, their grumbling turned into rebellion, resulting in a widespread plague. And number 4, they engaged in sexual immorality and pagan worship with women of Moab. Verse 11 then goes on to tell us, "Now all these things happened unto them for ensamples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come." These things happened to them as examples, and they were written down for warnings for us. To us, the fulfillment of the ages has come. Verse 12, wherefore let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. He's going on to say, if you think that you're standing firm, be careful that you're not going to slip and fall. Verse 13 says, there hath no temptation taken you, but such as in common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. Everyone faces occasional temptations. No one is exempt. Believers confront many of the same temptations that others have endured throughout history, but we can experience God's faithfulness during such times. Paul assures his readers that God will not give them more than they can handle, provided they rely on his strength and yield to the power of his Spirit. Verse 14 then tells us, wherefore, my dearly beloved, flee from idolatry. Sorry, just got to turn the page here. Now he's going on to tell us that we're supposed to flee from idolatry. Verse 15 says, I speak as to wise men, judge ye what I say. Now he's going on to say that he's speaking to those sensible people, to judge for ourselves what he's saying. Verse 16 then says, the cup of blessings which we bless, is it not the communion of the blood of Christ? The bread which we break, is it not the communion of the body of Christ? Now he's going on to ask a good question here. He's saying, is the cup of thanksgiving which we give thanks, is it not a participation in the blood of Christ? And is the bread that we're breaking, is it not that participation in the body of Christ? Verse 17 he goes on to say, for we being many are one bread, and one bread, for we are all partakers of that one bread. Now he's going on to say, because there's one loaf, and we are all one body, for we all partake of that one loaf. Verse 18 he goes on to say, behold Israel after the flesh, are not they which eat of the sacrifices partakers of the altar? Verse 19 says, what say I then? That the idol is anything? Or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols is anything? Verse 20, but I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils, and not to God. And I would not that ye should have fellowship with devils. Jewish believers would have understood that the Old Testament sacrifices, those who ate the sacrificial meat in the temple, communed with the Lord and appropriated the temporary forgiveness that was associated with those animal sacrifices. Similarly, pagan sacrifices were not only offered to idols, but part of the meat was given back to the worshipper so he or she could hold a feast, with the belief that God himself would be a guest. So while a believer need not only be overly concerned about the meat itself, he or she should not participate in the pagan festivals. The idols have been only wood and stone, but they had the spiritual forces, the real spiritual forces behind them that the believers were to avoid. 21 tells us, ye cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. Ye cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of the table of devils. Now he's going on to tell us that we can't drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of the demons at the same time. We can't have a part in both the Lord's table and the demon's table. Verse 22 says, do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? Are we trying to arouse the Lord's jealousy? Are we trying to prove that we're stronger than he is? Verse 23 says, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but all things edify not. Verse 24, let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth. Paul summarizes his argument of the last 3 chapters. Love for others should dictate a believer's choices and behaviors. Verse 25 then goes on to tell us, whatsoever is sold in shambles, that eat, asking no question for conscience sake. Verse 26, for the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Regarding meat sacrificed to idols, what a believer did in his or in their own home was of no concern. To a Christian, it was just a piece of meat. If believers were invited out to a dinner where the meat was served, they could eat it in good conscience. But if a fellow believer was at the dinner and was troubled by what was served, the more mature believers should refuse to eat, because the weaker one would comprise their own conscience. So now if we read 27, 27 here tells us, if any of them that believe not bid you to a feast, and if ye be disposed to go, whatsoever is set before you eat, asking no question for conscience sake. Now he's going on to say that if an unbeliever invites us to a meal and we want to go, we're supposed to eat whatever's put before us without raising questions of conscience. 28. But if any man say unto you, this is offered in sacrifice unto idols, eat not for his sake that shoot it, and for conscience sake. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. He's going on to say that if someone's telling them that the meat was sacrificed, or it's been offered through sacrifice, then they're not supposed to eat it, both for the sake of the man who told them and for the conscience's sake. Verse 29 says, conscience I say, not thine own, but of the other. For why is my liberty judged of another man's conscience? Paul's then going on to say, the other man's conscience is not yours. Why should his freedom be judged by another's conscience? 30. For if I by grace be a partaker, why am I evil spoken of for that which I give thanks? He's going on to say that if he's taking part in the meal with thankfulness, why is he denounced because of something that he's thanking God for? Verse 31. Whether therefore ye eat or drink, or whatsoever ye do, do all to the glory of God. Verse 32. Give none offense, neither to the Jews, nor to the Gentiles, nor to the church of God. 33. Even as I please all men in all things, not seeking mine own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved. Now he's finishing up by saying, whether you're to eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. You're not supposed to cause someone else to stumble, whether it be the Jews or the Greeks or the church of God. Even as he's trying to please everybody in every way, for he's not seeking his own good, but the good of many, so that they can be saved. For the good of many, so that they may be saved. Well, folks, that ends chapter 10. That crosses today's title off the list, History's Warnings. And guess what? Our next chapter will be moving in to talk about the Lord's Supper. The Lord's Supper is tomorrow's title. Tomorrow's session's title. And that'll be 1 Corinthians chapter 11. But we'll start off by talking about propriety in worship, then moving on to the Lord's Supper. We're growing closer to our Sabbath session. 11 will be our last session this week before we hit that Sabbath session. And then for our Sabbath session for part 2, we'll have Joanne on. But like I've explained before, she won't be, the video with her in it won't be uploaded right away. It might be about another 2-3 weeks before we get that video up, because we haven't had her in yet to do her talk. And actually, she'll be over the phone like Rick is, because she's from Independence, Missouri, which is where the Community of Christ headquarters is located. So folks, I thank you today for tuning in to Daily Bible Canada, and I hope we brought you your daily dose of the Bible. Once again, our website's always available for the live chat. Always send us an email at dailybiblecanada@gmail.com. We'll reply as soon as we get it. Thank you for tuning in today. Make it an amazing day. God bless, and good.